basically, I have sort of felt a little bit re-energized by this whole thing, and it's gotten me feeling, I guess, a bit nostalgic at the same time, which has got me thinking about the good old days where we would have a good, argument about a particular topic. And I also was imagining you probably coming down a little bit more. You've moved up market, obviously, very successfully in your career, and much of the ecosystem has, and is doing great. And then you've kind of got the open source community, the SMB, whatever that is, and there are different use cases, there are different needs, there are different interests there. So I was literally just thinking, I just want to talk to Philip about this. And I know by now everything's been said. There's nothing left to say. You probably, don't have much to say on the topic. But
if I had a lot to say, I probably would have said it during the Twitter dust up. Yeah. I'm assuming that everybody listening to this at this point, this far into this Kalen's Corner, or what the podcast, already has some perspective or has some awareness of what you're talking about. So we'll just dive in.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that, let me give you what I think is happening. There is an organization here, Whova, and Willem and those other, and the other folks who were the early signatories to
Mosca,
this,
Mosca, the Magento Open Source Community Alliance.
Sure, why not?
Yep.
Yeah. Those early, they have come out and very explicitly said, this is not about a fork. This was trying to have a conversation that, forecast a number of eventualities. Mm-hmm. And what I think is, there are people who just want to watch the world burn and love bringing marshmallows to the bonfire. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say you're one of them, but I think you're one of them. You just want any kind of dust up that you can, you love it because it's reinvigorating some kind of excitement or any kind of conversation that is bringing some, that is taking what is actually an apathetic, open source community that sort of was dormant and reigniting something, and any kind of passion is better than apathy. Mm-hmm. I kind of think that's what's happening, is people cheering it on are the kind of people who just love to see, some kind of excitement or controversy, even if it's good or bad. It doesn't matter what it is. It's there's a conversation happening. And in reality, I not to be pessimistic, I don't think that, and I'm happy for someone to clip this in a year or two's time and say I'm part of the problem and not part of the solution. I think the ship sailed on massive open source community investment in e-commerce platforms, period. I think it's gone. Because there are more exciting things in the world to work on, and there's more money to be had in AI and crypto. And that's, whether or not we want to say developers chase the money or not, you're chasing where the community is going and where the jobs are available. And that's where the capital is at the moment. It's in AI, machine learning, crypto, and those supportive technologies. And, and that's where the bulk of open source contribution is going to be at this moment in time. And if you are not in those areas, you are probably an old guy in the space, and you're a curmudgeon, and you're a little crusty, and you're clamoring for the old days again. But the old days are gone, dude. They're gone. They're not coming back. So this whole idea around a fork is to serve an ever decreasingly, an ever smaller community of. And by the way, I'm the one who's written a piece on Future Commerce about an apologist for open source, and saying that there is still a case for open source in the world in e-commerce. But I think that that's not getting bigger over time. It's getting smaller over time. Mm-hmm. So this is a fun thing for us all to get excited about. I don't know how much will actually come of it, or how many people will stick around for the next decade trying to build it, which is what ultimately I think everybody wants. I just don't think that the market for an open source e-commerce, developer ecosystem is viable at this point. Now, there could be an inflection point. I said this on the last Mage Talk episode that we've done at this time with Willem, which is an inflection point could be that there's something that happens economically where we go into a time of economic distress or a drawdown in GDP or economic growth slows, and then people are going to try to eke margin out of their e-commerce channels, and paying Shopify 2 to 3% becomes a liability and not a benefit. Mm-hmm. Maybe then there's a case for open source, and we'll see an exodus of all the SaaS cloud platforms to a bunch of open source platforms. But the question then that I would ask is, well, is Magento going to be the one at that point? Is it the newest, project with the most, recent investments in technology? I think if Mosca can provide that, then yes. But that's my rant, and
that's the rant.
Literally the only thing I have to say about it.
I think a lot of people do perceive me that way, as that I just like want to see it burn, No,
I mean, I was joking.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay. Well, it was funny because there's this Twitter account, Magento Pirates or something, and
is it?
Yeah, and I saw it, and it was like anti-Adobe, Magento. It was kind of a deal. And I see it, and I go, oh, that's funny, It was just this new account, and then the next day I'm getting DMs like asking if that's me, if I created that account, and I'm like, no, and then people were freaking out about it, that it was, spreading FUD or whatever, and I'm just like, guys, it's a random account with 8 followers. But I think people perceive me that way on some level. And I mean, I guess you're probably right in the sense that controversy is going to drive eyeballs to some extent. But I find myself being kind of inspired by what they're building, even though it is small. Maybe even because it's small, I think that they have a use case, which I see a lot of parallels between Huva, which is obviously just a front-end framework, and the rest of this, which is a lot more than just the front end. But I see a lot of parallels in people saying, "Hey, let's take a simpler approach. Let's do something that can drive down costs, that can be easier to use, that developers can work with. A small team can get a lot done, iterate quickly, create something valuable that works for their relatively small use case, but then can grow." And like I see Huva growing. I can imagine this growing over time. And something that they really are committed to long term. It's not just a short term, like, let's cause some chaos type of a thing, but it's really, Willem really wants to, Magento in this open source incarnation to have a really long, fruitful lifetime, even if it's for a relatively small segment of the market. So that's inspiring to me. We'll see where it goes.